Hello there, welcome to Anti-Social Media, the channel which is just over 5 years old, believe it or not. And recently I've started a new series called Gammon Box, which is based around the forthcoming GB News. I've simply just rearranged the logo a little bit. And the idea is to give you very short bursts of what the far right and Conservatives have been up to recently, what their grift entails, and what embarrassment they've brought to the table this week. All the videos are under 2 minutes long, and there's a series that you can watch right now. But sometimes I'm still going to make some longer videos which could be categorised as gammon-based news, such as this. Today we're going to talk about the campaign called Defund the BBC, which is a deliberately vague campaign which ventures into the realms of conspiracy theories aimed solely at right-wingers and morons, which, as we all know, are essentially the same thing. So I'm about to tell you 6 reasons why Defund the BBC is a terrible, shameless grift by the Conservatives and far right. But first, 2 things. First of all, as you may be aware, I lost my job recently and I'm under new accommodation temporarily. In about a month I'll be living elsewhere, which means I have different living conditions, better living conditions, where I can record inside a house. Well, flat technically, and that means I'll be using proper equipment again. Things will be much better quality and you won't be fighting against the wind to hear exactly what I'm saying. I won't have to come outside where, I don't know if you can see by the skies there, it's pretty grim today. Secondly, let me remind you, I'm sure you don't need reminding, but let me remind you that right-wingers cannot grift without appearing as a victim every second of every day. And Defund the BBC is just another way to claim that Conservatives are under attack and that the woke are out of control. But as usual, that is bollocks. It's all poorly constructed propaganda for idiots, and I'll show you why in just a second. One additional thing, it's important to know that the licence fee, the way the BBC is funded, costs £157.50 per year. Okay? Now, that pays for the BBC iPlayer, it pays for all the BBC TV channels and all the BBC radio channels, of which, cumulatively, there are hundreds of them. Plus S4C, which is a Welsh language channel. There is a fine of £1,000 if you do not pay the TV licence, if you want to watch these things. But you will never ever face a prison term because the government recently decriminalised evasion of paying the licence fee. Now, these are very important things to bear in mind over the course of this video. And now, as we fight against horrible wind, it's time to give you those 6 reasons why Defund the BBC is an almighty propaganda grift. Reason number 1, the licence fee is relatively cheap. At £157.50 per year, or £13.12 per month, it is relatively cheaper than a lot of the other services. Let's compare it to the highest priced Netflix subscription, which is £13.99, which is already more expensive than the BBC. Amazon is cheaper at £7.99 a month, but there is much less original programming available on that. Plus, you have to pay for a vast amount of the films you want to watch on there anyway, which already increases the price if you do decide to follow that model. Now TV ranges from £9.99 per month to £33.99 per month, and Sky TV averages out at £43 a month. Disney Plus is currently £5.99 a month in the UK, but like Amazon, the original programming is very slim indeed, and you're paying relatively a lot of money for very little service compared to the BBC. But these comparisons about how the BBC is very reasonably priced compared to its competitors is never mentioned by its detractors, because that would really ruin their point about it being expensive and so forth. Reason number 2, the government dictates the licence fee, how much it is and how long it goes on for. Today, as I'm recording this, about an hour ago, I saw a headline on The Guardian that says TV licence fee preferred option for funding until 2038. Right, so it's currently scheduled to run to 2028, but the MPs want to increase it by another 10 years. Reason being is there's no good reason, there's no other options that have been put on the table for funding the BBC in any other way. That includes a subscription model. They say that's not a good enough reason. They say it's not a good enough way to fund the BBC licence fee. What I'm saying is people who say defund the BBC should actually be angry at Tories for the price and structure of the licence fee. But because the campaign is run by people who vote and promote conservative politics, such as the people you see on your screen now, a real one that stands out there is Darren Grimes. Because of their politics, they would never acknowledge that the government is to blame for the licence fee. The third argument is that over 75s cannot afford the licence fee and they have to constantly pay it. Now this is contentious, but recently it was decided that they no longer have to pay for a licence fee. So that argument is now redundant. So if you hear anybody using that argument in conjunction with Defund the BBC, then they are just shameless, shameless grifters. Reason number 4 is apparently there's a news bias at the BBC, which is finally something we can all agree on, left and right. There is indeed a bias on the BBC. Conservatives say it's a bias against the right. The BBC has to have a balanced approach to news. They have to show right-wing, left-wing, often sort of a centrist sort of view as well to every single news report, which is why whenever a government policy is announced, they will always interview a Conservative, a Labour and possibly other. But critics say that the BBC is constantly going after the government. At the same time, left-wing people will show examples like this attack on Corbyn from Newsnight, clearly painting him some kind of communist with all the Russian imagery behind him, and this image of Rishi Sunak as fucking Superman as examples of a right-wing bias on the BBC. Non-Conservatives would argue that reporters such as Laura Kussenberg give the Conservatives a very easy ride. Others say that the Conservative Party is simply not held accountable on the BBC, and you have to look elsewhere for that to happen. Arguments include that the BBC go light on the government because they don't want the government to revoke the licence fee, something which they could do at any moment. Clearly, they haven't planned on doing that anytime soon, but they could do it at any moment. But when you consider the new person in charge of Ofcom, which regulates all TV programming in the UK, it's a former owner of the Daily Mail, Paul Dacre, you could easily argue the future for the BBC and the bias that is apparent in their news broadcasting is going to be wiped out, because any pro-left-wing thing that they say or in any way criticises the Conservatives will be clamped down by the former owner of the Daily fucking Mail. The fifth reason is similar to the last one, a overall left-wing bias on the BBC. That's what detractors say. And this is based upon, believe it or not, the fact that some presenters are left-wing. Therefore, they shouldn't be on TV. But that instantly falls down when you realise that their best example of the left-wing person they hate who is on the BBC is Gary Lineker, who indeed does a lot of left-wing politics on Twitter, but on telly, he's banned from talking about politics. So instead they say things like, oh, Gary Lineker is too highly paid, he should take a pay cut. And then when he does take a pay cut, they say, well, he's still too highly paid. So literally, he cannot win. A left-wing bias will include things like Owen Jones appearing on the BBC for an interview, but then when he's appearing on ITV for exactly the same reason, there isn't a bias on ITV, he's just an annoying cunt who the right-wing hates. What detractors mean by left-wing bias on the BBC is largely boiled down to the fact that comedy on the BBC has an apparent left-wing bias. And that is arguably a little bit true, because satirical comedy has to have a left-wing stance in order for it to work, because of the punching up aspect. And if you don't understand what that means, you shouldn't be talking about comedy. There's a reason why there's very few right-wing comedians on the BBC. There are a few of them, including on the top left-wing parent programme that was recently cancelled, had a Conservative comedian on regularly called Jeff Norcutt. But there's a reason why right-wing comedians are not there across the board, and it's not just because it's very hard to fill a 30-minute programme with one attack helicopter joke over and over again. It's because right-wing comedy largely doesn't work because it doesn't punch upwards. When they say there's a left-wing bias with comedy, they say what they're really saying is there should be zero criticism of the government, or much, much less criticism. And because left-wing comedy can only really criticise people in power, that means that they should be silenced, they should be cancelled. But if you think about it, there's only a handful of satirical shows on the BBC. I can think of Mock the Week, Have I Got News For You, which barely anyone watches anymore. The News Quiz, which is not even on TV, it's on radio, so that's even got a limited audience itself. And of course the MASH Report, which was recently cancelled. Now we all know that cancel culture is bad, but the new governor of the BBC, who wants to reduce the amount of left-wing comedy on TV, of which is already fuck all, actually decided to cancel the MASH Report show to appease the government and to appease the right-wing detractors, right? So even that argument doesn't stand up with a few left-wing supposed comedy shows on TV, one of which, the biggest one, which had a right-wing comedian on it regularly, has recently been cancelled. So what I'm saying is the right don't actually want free speech if it criticises the Conservatives. The sixth and final example of why Defund the BBC is a stupid, ridiculous campaign for idiots is the defund part. Much like defund the police, it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface and needs a lot of explanation. When people say defund the police, they mean divert money used for some police services to, say, mental health services. So the police aren't called out when a crazy person is doing crazy stuff and wasting their time where they could be catching criminals by basically calming down a person who is having a very bad day because of their mental illness. Instead, you get mental health workers who specify in that field to come along and help out that person, and it often results, especially in America, with that person not getting shot. The defund part of Defund the BBC basically means they don't want the licence fee anymore and would rather have a subscription model, which of course is not actually defunding the BBC. It still keeps the BBC in service, but just in a different way. Now, there is some way that to defund the BBC does work in this case, because the BBC will lose money with a subscription format, because not all current viewers of the BBC will pay for Netflix, Amazon and a BBC subscription service. And if this ultimately results in less money coming through, not defunding, but less money coming through, then some services may be cut, such as some aspects of BBC News, which would be a huge win for the propagandists and the people that run this campaign. But one thing you have to understand with the Defund the BBC campaign is, who is saying defund the BBC? Are they likely to be paid by anybody, such as, I don't know, someone who's been around for many, many years, quite an old fella who really hates any competition to his networks? Could it be that he is paying people to say defund the BBC? I don't know. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist like people who say defund the BBC do. But there's a good chance, isn't there, that Murdoch is in charge of this? There's a good chance that the rivals of the BBC are in charge of this. And it's a good chance that when GB News does launch in a month or two's time, one of their prominent strands will constantly be saying, is it time that we start giving money to the BBC? And I wonder why they will be saying that, seeing as they're a rival news service. It's a fucking mystery. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Remember, there's lots of Gammon Box stuff available on this channel, along with all the regular old videos, such as the Tim Pool Challenge and many takedowns of Paul Joseph Watson. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe, please like, and please share this on social media, because this is still a tiny channel, even after all these years, with a very niche following, and I can always do with some extra views. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, see you soon.